welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf, one of your hosts, joined by your other hosts. That includes Riley Fessler. How are you today, Riley?
Very good.
Excellent. And Minna Stein. How are you today, Minna?
Fabulous.
What do you have that's real news and not the kind of gossip that you guys discuss before we do these shows?
Hey,
If only the
Laura.
people knew. If only the people knew. You guys trying to break down the romance between Laura Loomer and Donald Trump.
Someone has to do it.
Yeah, someone has to suffer through reading the stories about it that are gag-inducing.
Seeing the photos,
Yeah.
watching the videos.
Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing I wish we could report on here as if it were real news. But it's not, so we can't. So we can't even intimate that the two of them are having some kind of really ugly affair. But maybe there's something else to talk about today. Serious stuff. Riley, anything?
There certainly is. Vladimir Putin has issued an order to increase the size of the Russian military by 180,000 troops, making it the second largest in the world. The move would swell the size of Russia's armed forces to 2.38 million people, including 1.5 million active servicemen, and marks the third time that Putin has expanded the military's rank since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Only China's military, with just over 2 million active service members, would be larger. Despite the increase, the Kremlin has said that no new mobilization is planned and that they will continue to rely on volunteers. Experts also question whether the Kremlin can actually sustain a standing military of that size.
Yeah, because they can, but they need to be doing something to get more people into the military because the number of people who have died with it as a result of his misadventure in Ukraine. The latest number I saw is the total number of Russians and Ukrainians who died in the couple of years since the intensification of the war in February 2022 is a million people on both sides, and more of them Russians than Ukrainians. He's depleted the resources of his military. He's depleted the sort of frontline military. And he has to find a way to rebuild without losing face. So he does this kind of thing and says, we're becoming even stronger. Although the reality is, as long as this war continues, they're becoming even weaker. Minna.
J.D. Vance argued that the key difference between conservatives and liberals is the recent attempts on Donald Trump's life, while Kamala Harris has not been targeted. He criticized inflammatory rhetoric from the left, specifically citing Representative Dan Goldman's comments about eliminating Trump, and called for a reduction in such dangerous discourse. This comes in the wake of an attempted assassination of Trump by Ryan Wesley Ruth, who faces federal charges. Both President Biden and Vice President Harris condemn political violence and call for increased support for the Secret Service.
First of all, before I get to this utterly disgusting statement by this really, really bad politician, whenever somebody falls in with on the wrong side of the law, their name gets reported with their middle name. And we then always refer to them as if they had three names and they used all three names. But they tend not to. This is just the way the police report these things. Like, Minna, what's your middle name?
It's Marguerite.
So if Minna murdered Riley, we would be
likely
Minna Marguerite Stein, right? Nobody knows of you as Minna Marguerite Stein. It always gets to me. That's why I always just break it back down to the two names. As far as the comment by Vance goes, it's disgusting on many, many levels. But it's not atypical. Yesterday, Trump issued statements that suggested that the Democrats were responsible for the attacks or planned attacks on him. Said it was their inflammatory rhetoric. This is what he said after the July 13th incident in Butler, Pennsylvania, as well, saying that Democrats saying he was trying to undermine democracy was what was inflammatory. Um, uh, of course, he is trying to undermine democracy. And Democrats framing him as somebody who promotes violence is easily proven because we saw what happened on January 6th. We saw what MAGA did during the BLM demonstrations. We saw him defend the marchers on Charlottesville and so forth. And so, this is just deflection when the real driver of potential political violence in the United States right now is Trump and Vance and MAGA and things like what they've been saying about Springfield, Ohio, that have led to bomb threats, school closings, pleas from local officials that people stop this because this is causing a great deal of stress there and in Aurora, Colorado, and elsewhere. Um, the thing that worries me is because they do have a tendency to be inflammatory and they do have people who actually go and act on what they say. You saw the Proud Boys marching in Springfield, Ohio the other day. That in the course of the next several weeks, we are likely to see um, new violence, uh, not driven by Democrats, driven by Republicans, driven by Vance and by Trump specifically, and it's probably as great a threat as we have ever seen during an election period. And frankly, if the results of the election are contested, perhaps an even greater threat after the election period. I've written something about this that should go up today at the Daily Beast, and I encourage you to go and look at it. Um, but you don't need me to tell you this. Just look at the facts. Riley?
Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly considering the dismissal of Defense Minister Yoav Gallant in favor of a more hardline replacement. Despite his membership in Netanyahu's party, Gallant has been at odds with the prime minister over the conduct of Israel's war against Hamas. Gideon Sa'ar is reportedly the top choice, though both Netanyahu and Sa'ar have denied that they are in negotiations. The removal of Gallant would eliminate the most significant Israeli leader in support of a ceasefire deal with Hamas, who has also been a key point of contact for the U.S. in its negotiations.
Yeah, just to put this in some perspective, of course, the International Criminal Court uh, filed charges against both Netanyahu and Gallant. And so, even if Gallant is seen by Netanyahu as too moderate here because he wants a ceasefire, he played a big role in the conduct of this war, which has gotten us up to more than 40,000 dead Palestinians, more around 100,000 injured in the destruction of all of Gaza. Uh, it's the kind of distraction that you might expect from Netanyahu to drag this thing out and also to reduce internal pressure regarding moving towards a ceasefire. It's whether it happens or not, it's kind of beside the point. The point is Netanyahu and those to the right of him are strongly resisting the ceasefire, and it does not appear that those to the right of him have their position weakening at the moment. In fact, they may actually be gaining strength again.
TikTok lawyers argue that a proposed U.S. ban on the app violates First Amendment rights, claiming the government has not met the strict legal standards required for such a measure. Circuit Court Judge Srinivasan questioned whether the U.S. could ban a media company owned by an adversary, while TikTok's lawyers compared the app to other foreign-owned media with no similar restrictions. The Department of Justice expressed concerns about data security and potential manipulation by TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance. Despite ongoing negotiations and proposed security measures like Project Texas, the case raises significant legal and national security questions.
We talked about this here yesterday. We don't think this is going to move forward quickly. There are a lot of reasons, legal reasons, why the United States cannot do this. There's some policy reasons why they probably should not do this. There's some political reasons why there will be a lot of backlash if they carry this forward and actually do it. And I think it's also, worth remembering that a lot of the problems we have in this country with disinformation um, do come from other media sources that are either owned by foreigners or owned by people who used to be foreigners but used their wealth to become Americans, like Elon Musk, like Rupert Murdoch, and they are at the core of the disinformation that's threatening the United States, and both of them have ties that suggest they often do the bidding of the Kremlin, um, uh, and so it just reveals the hypocrisy at the core of this thing, and it also reveals the level of the anti China feelings in Washington in both political parties. Something else that is, in my view, overwrought and destructive. Riley.
The Director General of the World Health Organization told the BBC that starvation in Sudan is, quote, almost everywhere. The Director General said that even with 12 million people being displaced, global attention on their plight is low. He added that half of Sudan's population, some 25 million people, need immediate support, but the crisis is, quote, not getting the attention it deserves. The current crisis has been fueled by a civil war between the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese military, which has left the country ravaged by conflict. Mediation efforts brokered by Saudi Arabia and the US have so far failed to end the conflict, prolonging the suffering.
Yeah, it's tragic. It's horrible. And it's the same old story. Unless there is some angle that brings the crisis home to politically relevant groups in major countries, these things don't get attention. I'll tell you a story. Long time ago, before there was even a Minna or a Riley, I was a senior government official, and we were on a mission to South Africa. It was very shortly after I had entered the Clinton administration. And we were meeting with the leaders of the African National Congress, who had not yet taken over the country, but the agreement had been put in place, and they were about to be in power. And so they wanted to meet with senior U.S. government officials about, you know, what the U.S. could do to help them. And I was there on a mission with the Secretary of Commerce, but there were a number of members of Congress, including Charlie Rangel of New York, and some business leaders and some others who were with us on this trip. Um, at the time, I was the Deputy Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade, and I was kind of the senior international policy guy on the trip. So anyway, we're meeting with them, and one of the leaders of the African National Congress, a guy named Trevor Manuel, who later became a minister in the government, um, said, we just read that you've given these very big loan guarantees to the Israelis so they could build housing. We need to build housing. It said you've done $10 billion for them. I really encourage you to do the same thing for us. And Charlie Rangel, who was a congressman from Harlem, um, and a kind of dyed in the wool sort of New York Paul, great, kind of funny, interesting character, laughed a moment. He said, look, if you want $10 billion from the United States, then you're going to have to get, 5 million of your people to move to New York City. And then you'll have the political clout to do this kind of thing. He was referring to the number of Jews in New York City who obviously made Israeli policy a priority. He was joking, but he wasn't joking. And that's the problem with crises like this in Africa. It is a hugely grave crisis, and in terms of the humanitarian implications, every bit as grave or more grave than what we see going on in Gaza. But it's not a photogenic war. It's not a politically relevant war. And so these people will die. they will die because the world, the leading countries of the world, don't care. It's outrageous. Shouldn't be true. Perhaps a new U.S. administration will step up and take a more interested stance with regard to Africa. After all, the vice president's been there and has expressed interest there in the issues there. But it's appalling, and it's kind of thing we're going to keep covering here because it's what you should be aware of. It's what you should be agitating for action on, and it's immoral for us to turn our backs on 25 million people who are suffering in the way that these people are suffering. So I'm glad you brought it up, Riley. You've been really good at getting these stories in there. That's it for us today. I'm sure there will be more in the way of breaking news about, Springfield, Ohio, and follow up to the assassination attempt, if that's in fact what it was, and developments around the world. And we'll be here to talk about them. And all our other podcasts will be out there for you to listen. And we hope you listen. And if you don't want to listen, is there any place they can see these things, Minna?
You could see them on YouTube if you wanted to. On YouTube, if you wanted to see our beautiful faces at 9 a.m. Check us out on YouTube to see what we look like.
Yeah, that's true. Or you can turn on the YouTube and listen, and you don't have to look. You can, and there's going to be little TikTok-y thingies out there too, right?
There are.
Yeah, so we encourage you. Well, when you're on TikTok or when you're on YouTube, sign up, get a sign up to our feeds, get into it, and see these things as they happen. Because with all of our podcasts, it's better when you can see what we're saying, because facial expressions mean everything. I mean, Minna, look at Riley's facial expression right now.
Well, exactly. And for the people who watch on YouTube, we'll call out Riley right here, right now, and say, yesterday you promised a Harris Walls t-shirt, and today I don't see it.
I got it yesterday, and I had to wash it first because it's a little too big for me.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I have that problem all the time. What is the t-shirt you're wearing right now, Riley?
Oh, this is my DC half shirt that I got for running the 5K. I'm not quite at the half marathon yet, but I got it over the weekend.
Wait a second. It says DC half, like you ran a half marathon, but you only ran a
5K? It's kind of stolen run valor, to be honest, because it doesn't clearly indicate that I only ran the 5K. But you know what? I'll take it.
Wow, that's really kind of embarrassing. We'll try to get more truth in t-shirts on this podcast as we go forward in time. But do take Minna's advice and check out YouTube, check out TikTok, and we'll dress better if you do. I promise. If there are more people watching, then we'll make more of an effort.
And leave us a comment. We loved all of your comments yesterday about Godzilla -1.
Yeah, we got a lot of comments calling you out, David, talking for talking smack about Godzilla -1. We got comments in the Discord, we got comments in Slack, we got comments on YouTube. All people saying that Godzilla -1 is great. So, you're in the minority opinion here, David. You got to watch it.
I got to be honest with you. Prior to your mentioning it, I didn't even know what Godzilla -1 was.
Wow. You need to get cultured, David. Come on.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I really think of myself as a big culture maven. But I'll tell you what I've been watching. Yesterday, past couple of days, I watched the 2-part documentary on HBO about The Godfather. About The Sopranos and the making of The Sopranos. And it's really, really good. If you like The Sopranos. By the way, Riley, The Sopranos is a show about
I know what The Sopranos is.
But it's just a great show. It makes you want to go back and watch The Sopranos again from beginning to end. But then I've actually gotten hooked 3 years late. I admit it. I'm not with the trend on this HBO series Industry. Are you aware of this?
I am
I've
not.
heard of it, but I haven't watched it.
Which is about a bunch of young strivers trying to make it in the cutthroat world of finance. But it is super dramatic. It is extremely well done. It stars Kit Harington from
Oh,
Game
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
Thrones, if you like
Yeah.
Kit Harington, in a very, very different role from his role in Game of Thrones. For example, there are no like
Swords.
zombies planning to eat the world and that kind of thing.
Honestly, I mean, you said it's in finance, right? So I mean, it's
Yeah.
not that far off.
Yeah, well, true.
There are similarities, but it's really, really good. So I just want people to know that just because I don't know what this cheeseball sci-fi movie is,
We're gonna get more comments today now, David.
I know.
Yeah, bring it on. Bring it on. Okay?
We'll see what our listeners have to say about that.
Yeah, okay, listeners, and come on, there's a sort of kind of a bias. The kind of listeners who actually will go into, a Discord or whatever, they're the kind of nerds that watch the kind of stuff you guys watch.
You're digging yourself a deeper hole, David.
Yeah.
And so, the rest of you out there, find a way to communicate.
Send David your carrier pigeons that you hate Godzilla.
Oh man, that's so ageist. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. All right. Well, anything that produces more community action around here, I'm for it. And if there's anything you guys want us to talk about here, please let us know. We can do it. We can bring in guests to talk about it. We can do all sorts of things because we may be the smallest media company in the world, but this is our media company, so we get to do whatever we want. Anyway, until we hear from you later, we will go back to our business of putting together lots and lots of podcasts. So thanks for joining us. Thank you, Minna. Thank you, Riley. Thank you, everybody. And we'll be back again soon.